this book that I mentioned before, Obama, the Postmodern Coup, from 3 years ago, is Obama is the new Carter, and Brzezinski was there and is there, and now there are some, younger clones of Brzezinski who can do the work under Obama. And the idea is subversion, right? You overthrow countries talking about human rights and so forth. You do these color revolutions, as they're now called, and that allows you to do all this very cheaply. One of the things Obama will do, I'm sure now, is he can go to Wall Street and say, look, guys, stupid Bush and Cheney insisted on invading and bombing Afghanistan and Iraq, and look what it cost you, trillions of dollars, hated around the world, isolated, alliances in a shambles. With me, I can get you European troops and European money because I do it under left cover. I do it with humanitarian stories being told and anti-tyranny and all the rest of these things. But in reality, the goal is get the Chinese out of Africa. This dividing of Sudan, right? One of the goals there is kick the Chinese out of southern Sudan because that's where they're getting significant oil.
Well, if this is the goal, are they doing it brilliantly?
I think the problem with their strategy is it's very fragile now. In other words, all it takes is one failed color revolution, and that whole model goes into crisis. And really, the Iran, the so-called Twitter revolution in Iran back in June of 2009, that's already a failure.
That did not work.
It fizzled.
Yeah.
And now that added to desperation. In other words, there's a very interesting website in Moscow. It's run by a guy that I've actually met, General Ivashov, the former head of the Russian General Staff. And one of their articles, this is called the Institute for Strategic Culture. It's a think tank in Moscow. They say that Obama began getting reports about the destabilization of Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, Algeria, Saudi Arabia, and so forth in the autumn of 2009. That would be right after the failed coup in Iran, which didn't take off. And that all during 2010, what you see now was being avidly prepared by, the entire State Department, CIA, NSA, the whole community, right? The entire resources of the U.S. Government. Just a couple of other ones would be who's playing the Iran card, because this is also very, very relevant. Or maybe actually before that, we focus for a second on Pakistan. This is a really big, important country, right? This is 2.5 times the size of Iran. It's 180,000.
They've got nukes.
Nuclear weapons, huge place. What have they been doing? Well, we just had the meeting of the Sino-Pakistan Defense Board just last week. 2011 has been declared the China-Pakistan Friendship Year. And the idea is you can read all kinds of editorials in publications like the Pakistan Observer, where they say it's time to switch alliances, dump the U.S., get them out of here. They're killing our people with these drones. They're carrying out assassinations, right? The word is if you get a wedding invitation in northwest Pakistan, you better not go.
Don't go.
Because they're going to come and blow you up. And they do this deliberately because the goal is to foment a rebellion inside Pakistan of these tribal areas against the central government. And with the U.S. the U.S. does the killing, but the central government in Islamabad is blamed. So they're trying to export the war from Afghanistan into Pakistan. The idea is that people in Pakistan say, we've had enough of this. Let's go with the Chinese. They're our natural allies. They're rivals of India. We're not going to be shot to pieces every day by the Chinese. And this gets us to this case. This guy Ray Davis. Right? This is now the so-called U.S. diplomat. I think quite obviously a CIA official who has been arrested by the Pakistanis and is now being held. And Hillary Clinton has been screaming about this, that he's got to be freed immediately. Well, again, in these publications like Pakistan Observer, they're telling us that he's a terrorist controller, that he is out there, not acting as a diplomat, but he's organizing terrorist events that can be used to discredit and destabilize the Pakistan government. And not just any kind of terror events, but a dirty bomb. In other words, a nuclear dirty bomb using conventional explosives wrapped up in some kind of radioactive waste or or something like this. Now, if you think of that, right, suppose he had succeeded, suppose the story is true, which I can't really tell.
Well, and what was he even doing there in the first place?
Well, the Pakistanis have been forced, with all this, talk about terrorism, global war on terror and so forth, they have been blackmailed back and forth with these, the Times Square bomber. They were blamed for this. They're blamed for all of these things. And every time one of these events takes place, the blackmail on Pakistan increases, and they're told, you've got to accept more, essentially, U.S. Embassy employees who are fairly obviously from the CIA or from some military contractor. So imagine, think of the scope that the U.S. intelligence community is trying to give to this wave of destabilizations. If you imagine that one of the components that was planned in, or may have been planned in, was a radiological dirty bomb in Pakistan, leading then to the U.S. saying, aha, those Pakistani nukes are not under control, we're going to seize them. Because this is what protects the Pakistanis. You can't invade Pakistan because they have nuclear deterrence. If you do, you may get an atomic bomb on your head. So that's pretty good deterrent. So they have to find a way to attack Pakistan, which is a natural ally of China. If you look at the map, if you want to get oil from Iran to China, and this is a huge issue for the Chinese, you don't want to go by water because it's 12,000 miles and the U.S. and the British dominate the ocean.
Right.
You could build a pipeline from Iran, and then you go up Pakistan, you cross the Himalayas above India, and you're in China. And that would solve the biggest single strategic weakness that the Chinese have, is they don't have a guaranteed overland source of oil. So that's one of the reasons. There's also this port of Gwadar in southern.
Well, where was all this headed, Webster? Where's this taking us as a nation?
I think this is as you were saying before. This is somehow it's an exercise of shock and awe, but it's not the shock and awe of bombing. It's the shock and awe of a hammering series of astounding events, right? As you were saying. It just doesn't end. Just a couple of other ones. In Lebanon, the U.S. was too weak to prevent Hezbollah from essentially nominating their own government there. Or how about Iraq? In Iraq, the U.S. wanted the puppet Alawi to become the prime minister, and were incapable of imposing Alawi as the prime minister. Instead, the prime minister remains Maliki, who is notoriously a friend of the Iranians. What else can we say? Turkey. Turkey is a country now that wants to be independent. They're saying maybe the best thing for many of these places is to go back under the Ottoman Empire. I don't think that's a good idea, but people in Turkey say so. The Turks came forward and tried to mediate the situation with Iran, right? The nuclear stuff, that's almost a year ago now. So you can see a lot of these countries are playing the Iranian card. And maybe I should focus on Egypt, because this was so dramatic. What was Mubarak's great original sin? Like, what did he do that was so terrible? Well, one of the things he did was last October, with Hillary Clinton screeching around the world that you had to cut all relations with Iran, no banking, no trade, no nothing, sanctions. Mubarak opened direct flights from Cairo to Tehran and back. It was sort of a slap in the face of the U.S.
Right.
And this was not the first thing that he had done. In 2009, when Obama came in, the big idea was, let's build a front of Arab Sunni countries. That would be Egypt, it would be Saudi Arabia, it would be the Emirates out in the Gulf. And let's ally them with Israel, and let's put U.S. military bases in these countries, and then let's play that against Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the so-called radicals, right, the rejection front. And then let's dominate the region using these two fronts. Now, according to reports from the Egyptian press, Mubarak was the first guy to say no. Mubarak has never allowed U.S. bases, or he never allowed U.S. bases in Egypt. They're not there now, and well, they may be coming there now, but he never let them in. And he said, if you want to put me under the U.S. nuclear umbrella, that's going to require U.S. Air Force bases here. I don't want them. I will not allow them. And therefore he essentially sabotaged the main strategic idea that the U.S. had. The U.S. wanted troops for Iraq from Mubarak. The answer was no. The U.S. wanted troops for Afghanistan. Answer was no. So this guy was not a puppet. This was somebody who had acquired, he was an entrenched authoritarian figure, to be sure, but he had acquired a lot of autonomy. In other words, this was a guy who could say no.
He was getting too big for his britches?
Right, and he's not the only one. You look at Bahrain, right, this island out there in the Persian or Iranian, Arabian Gulf, whichever you want to call it. Bahrain is the base of the 5th U.S. fleet. So this is the question of, the Straits of Hormuz and this tremendous oil artery of the world. The royal family of Bahrain had said to the U.S., we forbid you, we will not allow you to use our base for any attack on Iran. So you look at this panorama, and you look at all these places, right, be it Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Iraq, Lebanon, Italy, Germany even, Turkey, each one in its own way. All of them striving to get out from under this unipolar U.S. domination, and the world essentially becoming multipolar again, and the U.S. absolutely freaking out and saying, well, if that's what it's going to be, we're going to bring down all these countries like 10 pins, right? We're just like bowling pins, right? We're just going to knock them all off.
Start all over.
But, and again, the main weapon they have, because of the military overstretch, because of the bankruptcy and the isolation and the hatred and the weakness, the main thing they have to work with is the color revolution. It's got to be the postmodern coup. And if it keeps failing, as it failed in Iran, and it worked in Egypt, I guess.
It worked in Tunisia. It worked in Egypt.
But look, here's the way this stuff works. The color revolution is essentially a show in the foreground. In other words, you have a bunch of walk-on parts. You have a bunch of extras who come in.
Hold on for a second, Webster. We're going to hit this break, and then we're going to come back. We'll talk more about this. And also, I want to get into WikiLeaks and Julian Assange and get your take on that, in how involved he might be with the CIA, of all things. We'll be back.